Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host Adi Shavit, CTO and co-founder of Swapp. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Adi.
Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to it.
So Adi, take us back to your college days till this date. What would be your top three career highlights?
Well, my background, I come from the algorithms side, not from architecture. So computer science, master's degree, and a lot of very deep algorithms. So computational geometry, a lot of computer vision. And right after my university degree, I went into actually a Japanese project company where I embedded real-time computer vision, a lot of AI, what is called today AI, but frankly, this is what I've been doing for over 25 years. So solving real world problems. So not academic papers, but actually solving real world AI and machine learning problems. Long before it was on everyone's top news. After working for that company for almost 10 years, I became an independent consultant and I actually founded multiple startups. So Swapp is at least my third company, depending how you count. And it was always on the intersection of hard algorithms and real world application. I think one of the highlights was when I joined up with my co-founder Eitan Sarfati, and we eventually sold our previous startup to Autodesk. That was a really big confirmation about how technology can really bring value to customers, to users, to this whole industry of the AEC. And when we were working within Autodesk, we saw how we learned to understand and saw how the whole AECO industry works from inside. We came to understand the problems, the workflows, what works and what was still broken. And when we left, we actually founded Swapp specifically to solve these pains that we knew were still there. Construction document was a bottleneck that nobody was actually touching. I remember talking to a founder and she told me something like, she was talking to her partner and she said somebody should come and do this construction documents problem, but who's going to touch it? It's such a complex problem. And I told her, well, this is exactly where we're going. I think that was the vision all along when we started the company. And it's actually how I think about AI. It's not as magic as some people might have you believe, but it's engineering. It's algorithms that must be correct, performant, trustworthy, and still bring value where previous attempts or previous approaches simply could not manage to deliver this value. There's a lot of cool factor around AI. Everybody loves watching those videos or the amazing Midjourney images, and Swapp isn't really going into that direction. We're looking more to help alleviate a lot of the pains for the whole ACO industry and focusing on architecture and engineering. What else? Well, I'm a frequent speaker at various conferences. I've been speaking at Next Build for several years. I organized something called the Architecture Disruption Society. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek user group here, but interest in AI and how it intersects with this whole industry is incredible. People are just so thirsty. I'm sure you've seen it with your show as well. Everybody wants to know, where am I going to be in 2 months or in 2 years or in 5 years? And there's so much to learn from each other. I really am a big believer in communities, in learning from each other and teaching from each other and inspiration. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the industry right now, and it's real and it's accelerating. So this is like a very, very short recap of my journey and what I believe after doing AI for 25 years. This is
Yeah, that's a long journey. I'm curious to know, what is one algorithm which you have solved you're most proud of, and what is one algorithm you haven't solved and is excited to solve that problem?
Well, actually, as a veteran founder and entrepreneur, I never fall in love with algorithms. It's one of the earliest lessons that I learned the hard way, I must say, because as an engineer, you love seeing elegant solutions and you love seeing clever solutions to different problems. But I've learned over the years that the technology is the enabler. It's what empowers actual solutions for customers. So before LLMs, we solved similar problems in different ways. Now LLMs, for example, they bring their own pros and cons to problems, which we must handle. So I never think about the problem this way. I come from the customer pains, from the product requirements, and we tailor the solution. I will always choose the simplest solution because it's easier to maintain, it's easier to upgrade, it's easier to handle, it's easier to expand than looking for. I've seen a lot of founders, a lot of usually from the engineering part, that would have a technology looking for a problem. And I'm actually always trying to do it the other way. Right? So we have customers who have real problems, and we will deploy the best solution for them. If it requires highly advanced machine learning capabilities with deep neural networks and graph algorithms and so on, we will do that. If it can be solved with simpler off-the-shelf components, we will do that, because at the end of the day, we're a company and we have a bottom line, and we have our product to move forward. I can talk for hours about hundreds of very cool algorithms that I've implemented in production, but I think it's not always the right question to ask for somebody who's starting out or building a real company.
In your transition into construction, you might have discovered insights along your journey through various things. What is something you learned the hard way and you wish someone would have told you earlier before entering construction?
I can speak about things that happened across my whole career. So as I said, Swapp is maybe my third company. So both me and my co-founder, this is not our first company. So we always try to be ahead of where the problems really lie. So one of the things that I would put my finger on is really thinking, it doesn't necessarily come from arrogance. It comes from um, a place where you've seen a problem, you've heard about a problem, you found a very interesting approach, and you think you know what customers would like. One of the first things I would say that I would have helped me all those years ago, maybe 15 or more years ago, is the whole concept of stealth is usually oversold for many situations. It's more about go and speak to your users. And your users are not always your customers. Go and speak to the people who are experiencing the pain that you are going through, even if you've gone through the same pain. Different people perceive and use the same tools differently. So it's more about understanding the scope of the problems and where the problems really lie. And then you go out and you build exactly the solution that will bring value to the customers. So I think this is one of the most important realizations, that you need to understand exactly who your customer is and who those users are and why users and customers are not the same thing. And then you go out and you solve those problems instead of problems you wish you had to solve.
If we go to the early days of Swap, can you walk us through how those moments look like? The early beta testing, pilot, talking to customers. How were you navigating those days?
I think we had certain principles laid out at the beginning. One of them was based on the fact that Swap never tries to guess intent. Architectural practice and engineering practice and architects, they have a huge set of constraints that can never be entered manually into any system, can never be totally inferred from any system. So our systems never guess intent. We always try to alleviate the problems and the pains and to actually make the users more effective by letting them handle the high level important decisions, because a lot of them are, this is mainly, you could say that architects and engineers are problem solvers. So we want to let them focus on those things which they studied for at the university and when they're practicing, and less about doing menial or chores, which are in fact the most time consuming part of most of these practices. I think this is what we set out to do, is to alleviate the pain. And one of the major advantages of this approach is that when you're alleviating a pain for a customer, we're actually always on the side of our customer. It's never a zero-sum game. It's always we're together, shoulder to shoulder. And, if we make our algorithms more effective, more efficient, cheaper for us, it immediately translates into the ROI for them. So we always say that our KPIs are our customers' ROIs. So our key performance indicators are our customers' return on investment. So the fact that it's in our both best interest for us and our customers to give the best results faster and cheaper really changes the whole dynamic of how we speak to our customers. They immediately become our champions within the organization. They will, if it's from going from testimonials all the way to introducing us to additional groups within their companies or to additional departments in their current companies. And I think this is one of the major differentiators for us in terms of mindset, is that we're not selling something. It's not a zero sum yet. It's definitely alleviating pain is always a win-win situation for both sides. And we just need to ensure it works. And once your customers become your champions, they also understand that when this dynamic of providing feedback really affects where the product is going. So it's not some kind of altruistic relation. Each side has a lot to benefit from the relationship.
What does a week in your life as the CTO and co-founder look like?
Wow. Well, I think a CTO of a startup is really someone who is a master juggler. So it's about managing the team and understanding the context where each team member needs to operate, ensuring I must make sure that I remove all the barriers for them to move quickly, because time is as the founder's biggest enemy. We have to move fast. We have to maintain velocity, maintain cadence, and ensure that we're delivering on time. But on the other hand, I always must delegate and trust my team. So my team, I always try to hire people who are smarter than I and let them take ownership of the parts where they specialize in. And I trust them to provide the value where I can only have some intuition. So it's always juggling barrier removal as a manager and still trust and delegation of the team members to allow the product to move forward. So it's a lot of synchronization and juggling while trying not to waste time on very, very lengthy multi-participant meetings, and also developing. So I love software development. I've been doing it for over 30 years. I'm a very, very hands-on developer. And with all the new AI tooling that's coming out, I'm trying to, I've had probably tens of thousands of hours on things like Cloud Code and programming with programming AI tools. And I tried also to disseminate a lot of the knowledge within the team about best practices. So we're doing a lot of internal validation and training and understanding how these tools change our profession, how our skills are affected by these kind of things. Because I don't think AI is going to replace developers. In fact, we've never been busier. It's more about changing the way we work, where the impact goes, how it affects the day-to-day development, how products and features are shipped, how they're tested, how they're QA'd, how they're maintained.
So building on that, if there is a person listening who wants to start a construction tech startup and wants to be CTO, how do they think about the culture and setting the whole org and the startup in a AI native way? Even planning the roadmap. Like if someone is planning, okay, I want to do the whole startup product development in a cloud native way, how should they think about it?
I think understanding your go-to-market is probably the most important point you need to go out of. So you need to understand the problem. You need to understand your customers. Technology should never really lead. I think come from the problem you're solving, understand your market, and then talk to a lot of people who are smarter than you, people who are more experienced than you are. These days, I would say, consult the AI engines. Don't take their word, but use what they say as starting point for discovery. And sometimes the solutions, you will have many alternative options, and it really depends on the particulars of what you're doing. If you're going into construction and your users are a foreman and people working on the site, then their use case would be very, very different from an architect who's sitting in an office in front of a big desktop machine with huge screens. So the general advice here is more about understanding your market and understanding where you're going. Following up on that, keep your finger on the pulse of where the ecosystem is going. I think this is one of the main reasons that Swapp has managed to stay around for so long. The market is changing, but we always try to be at least 2 steps ahead because, as I said, that once it's learn to know when you need to adjust or pivot before your shareholders tell you to do that, or before the market forces you to do that. So we always need to know where everyone is going, what everyone is doing, what the customers are expecting. A lot of customer education already happens organically within your ecosystem. So if I would have brought a text interface into Revit, for example, like a chat interface, 5 years ago, I'm not sure the people would know what to do with it. A lot of question marks. Even the IT departments would treat it differently inside enterprise organizations than they do today. So you must always know where things are going to understand. There's so much information online, from podcasts like yours, from conferences like Martin Day's Next Build and Next meetups, as I mentioned earlier. So you must, as a founder, always be aware of the ecosystem around you. Not everyone is a competitor. There are many amazing technologies out there, amazing companies out there that are more complementary to many of the things one might want. And talk to people, just talk to everyone, get a good sense of what's right for the users before you try to solve whether you want to do it on Azure or Amazon or Google Cloud. I think that's probably the wrong question to ask.
Yeah, you're sharing a lot of like mindset thinking, how related to the product development. I think what would be some tips you could share on hiring A players in startup?
I think that had changed a lot over maybe the past year or two. I don't think anyone has really figured it out completely today, because in the age of AI, um, hiring becomes more complex, because it's not that you don't want, if somebody is using AI, pass some, I don't know, interview tests, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think even in the same, I have a friend who had two roles in his company. One manager said, this is exactly what I expected. The other one said the guy was cheating. So I think it's a big question. In my recent hirings, I actually had people, I requested them to use AI, and I had them explain why and what they used the AI coding for, where they had to change direction, what they had to change instruction. But I think it depends on the role, because sometimes some things are beyond what regular off-the-shelf coding assistants would do for you. If you're looking to do some very deep optimization algorithms, you need people with the relevant experience. If you're looking to do some other things, you want people who bring their experience but can adjust and adapt and adopt new technologies. So I think everything is changing. I don't have a really good answer here. I'm still deliberating this, and I'm happy to hear what others think about it.
You mentioned earlier about go to market. What from the Swapp's journey, what were some go to market things that worked, some things that didn't work, which we can learn from it?
Our go to market was architects. And one of the major questions we had to ask ourselves is, first of all, we want as little as possible interruption to their normal workflow, because as a small company, you cannot come and replace the full workflow or full pipelines of every profession. You want to do the least disruption to their day-to-day expectations, because you cannot educate a full industry. On the other hand, sometimes you want to understand or make your customers understand that there's a lot of value in changing some of the work processes. When we tried, the Swapp system is a web-based cloud system, and we try to make sure that any data that needs to move from their, let's say, Revit or their BIM tools into the system is as easy as possible on the one hand. But one of the things we're doing right now is actually working within their own tooling. So it's always about reducing friction. Reducing friction means higher adoption, means a smoother experience, and means a more immediate value in places that the user is familiar with. And it's easier said than done. So it's much easier to build your own and to be in charge of everything and to be able to maintain everything and to make changes as you wish. It's much more difficult to break up a system into components that have to interact with other systems, into components that plug into and run within different vendor applications. Different vendors have different SDKs, different environment, different programming languages, different APIs, different data layouts. So it's a much, much bigger challenge to be less disruptive to the workflows. And when we were working our go-to-market is architecture firms, we always try to understand how we can make the experience smoother, how we can bring the value to the customer and not having the customer jump through various hoops in order to bring the data to us where they will extract the value and then they have to do some more hoops in order to get it back. We've seen this a lot even outside of Swapp's domain, where architects would move their data to various consultants, and and then they would manually transfer it to some other third-party software, and then it has to go back, and then the engineers again have to do this over and over. This is something that really consumes a lot of time. It accumulates errors, and eventually it may cost a lot of time and money.
How can people listening can support you in your mission?
I think our mission is always to reduce the tedious parts of working and manual work within design software. So if you're working in Revit or you're working in other BIM tools, our aim is to make you more productive. So if you are an architect who, instead of using your problem solving superpowers that you studied over at university and then tried to had large dreams about design, and what you find yourself moving lines and annotations for 7, 8, 9 hours a day, this is exactly where Swapp comes in and tries to alleviate a lot of that pain, to automate a lot of that pain, while also allowing you to maintain control. So this is, again, part of what I mentioned earlier about intent. We must leave the control in the hands of the user. We never guess or suggest what the concept of best doesn't really exist, in the sense that there is no best. There is, for every context, there is one. There may be multiple different optimal situations, but the architect always knows best. So we leave the control in the hands of the architect, and we empower the architects and the engineers to be more productive.
I have a rapid fire round to wrap up the interview. You have less than
Okay.
5 seconds to answer it, and you got to keep it super brief.
Okay.
What's your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant, I love Japanese food. So a good Japanese restaurant in Japan is probably my best. But I also like a lot of Michelin star restaurants. So try to do at least one a year.
A city or country which is in your travel bucket list?
I would say Vietnam. I've never been there, but on my bucket list is always Japan. I've been to Japan many, many times. I lived there, and it's always, okay, when's the next time?
Any book that made a big impact in your life?
I read a book called Brunelleschi's Dome. It's about an engineer, not an architect, who solved one of the greatest construction challenges of his era by thinking about the problem differently than everyone in his guild. He built the big dome in Florence about 600 years ago, 400 years ago.
3 words your co-founder would describe you as?
Engineer, I would say egoless, and we think alike.
A piece of advice you would like to give to your 18-year-old self?
I think it's a brave new world. It's about understanding the tools. I think AI is already changing a lot of the industries, a lot of the workplaces in the world, not in a magical way, but in a methodological way, and get to know the tools, understand how they work, understand how to leverage them to maximize their effect on your life.
Great, Adi. It was pleasure hosting you. Anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you'd like to share on a closing note?
Yeah, I think AI is changing a lot, but it will probably not replace a lot of jobs. I think it will change the way many of the jobs are done today. And I think it's an effect for good eventually. So at least at Swapp, this has always been our goal, and our motto is to affect positive change to the working life of architects and engineers.
Awesome. It's great to know Swap's journey. Pleasure hosting you.
It's been a pleasure, Mayur, and I'm happy to be here. And please come